Colorado has had a rough year so far, a combination of rampant forest fires and now what is considered one of the worst floods in the country in decades, possibly hundreds of years, sweeping through Colorado. It seems obvious climate change has to have something to do with this, cycles, whatever. At some point it has to come back to the climate, but radio pastor Kevin Swanson has a completely different theory about who is to blame. Let's watch.
Let me ask you this. Is it a coincidence that this was the worst year politically in the history of Colorado, at least if you use God's law as a means of determining human ethics? Our legislators did the worst possible things this year than I have ever witnessed in the 20-some years I've been in Colorado. Our legislators committed homosexual acts on the front page of the Denver Post. Dave, you remember that? So here we have the very worst year in Colorado's history in terms of, let's kill as many babies as possible. Let's make sure we encourage as much decadent homosexual activity as possible. Let's break God's law with impudence at every single level. Okay, every single level. Let's make sure that we offend whoever wrote the Bible. So we have the worst year possible politically in the state of Colorado, and it happens to be the worst year ever in terms of flood and fire damage in Colorado's history. That is a weird coincidence.
In Colorado this last year, we walked in lewdness and lusts and drunkenness and revelries and drinking parties and abominable idolatries.
Marijuana.
And abominable idolatries. And they think it's strange down at the Gold Dome that we are not running with them in the same flood of dissipation. Sometimes when you're in a flood of dissipation, God might bring a real flood to show you the consequences of the flood.
So is it a coincidence that these fairly progressive policies have been pushed in Colorado in the same year where fires and floods have swept across the country? Yeah, it's a coincidence. It has nothing to do with your sky god. It has nothing to do with religion whatsoever. It is a coincidence. A couple of interesting notes from that quote. He says that we offend whoever wrote the Bible. I thought they had a pretty good idea of who, at least in their opinion, wrote the Bible, but it's still up for debate, according to them. Secondly, apparently there were homosexual acts on the front page of their newspapers. I find that hard to believe. It's probably like a couple getting married. They see it as homosexual acts. And so, yeah, I mean, look, they're saying we can cloak it in the language of Christianity. We can cloak it in whatever societal acceptance we have for some of the theories that they're peddling. But at the end of the day, I don't see any substantial difference between what they're saying about legalizing marijuana, about allowing gay marriage, and these floods and fires. It is the same thing as a caveman standing on the shore and shouting at a tsunami. You are a moron. You are living in BC 6000. I don't know what's going on in your mind, but you need to catch up to the rest of us because it has nothing to do with Christianity. Jesus doesn't care about pot. God doesn't care about marijuana. Like, culture is changing, society is changing, but these guys, perhaps in a justifiable attempt to retain the positions they have in terms of Christian radio, are not catching up with the rest of us. Really fast, they have this interesting fact section from their page. This is the Generations with Vision radio show, by the way, if you feel the need after that clip to watch it. And there are a couple of funny things. We're actually going to skip ahead to the final part from their facts section. It says, what can I do with this body of believers for their Reformation church? He says, that's better. You can worship God, love the brothers, and serve one another. Our church is about relationships, vertical and horizontal. Or in a swing, hanging from ropes, on a wrecking ball, wherever you want to have the relationships, that's what they're about. And so I love that even as they're speaking out against gay marriage, even as they're attributing forest fires and floods to it, they can't help but inject a little bit of subtle homosexual interest into it. I'm sure it was totally accidental.